The first time I walked down into this basement, I was standing in 2 inches of water. In March, before I hit the bottom step, the walls were black with mildew halfway up. You could smell it before you opened the door, that wet, mineral, rotten penny smell that gets into a house and never really leaves. The owner told me it had flooded every spring for 20 years, some years worse than others. He kept a sump pump running like it was a member of the family, had a spare one on a shelf still in the box because he'd learned the hard way what happens when the first one quits at 2 in the morning during a thaw. Everyone said tear it down, fill the basement, pour a slab, walk away, said the water was going to win no matter what. A couple of contractors before me told him the same thing, that a stone foundation and spring runoff is a fight you don't win, you just manage. I told him I could stop it, for good, not for a season, for about $34,000, and I'd have it dry before the next thaw. 14 weeks, that's the promise. And I meant the for good part. Let me tell you about her first. This house went up in 1911. A Vermont farmhouse, timber and fieldstone, built by a fellow named Ainsley who ran dairy on this land. The stone foundation's the original, big rough granite blocks a man hauled up out of his own fields with a horse and a stone boat. Some of those blocks run 3 feet long and weigh more than I do. That's real work. Nobody does that anymore. He set them dry fit first, I'd wager, fitting each stone to its neighbor like a man doing a puzzle in the dark, then pointed them with lime mortar mixed on site. You can still see where he shimmed a low corner with a flat wedge of slate. Little decisions made by hand 110 years ago. And trouble is, in 1911, nobody thought about the water the way we do now. They set the stone, packed the dirt back around it, and hoped. For a while, it worked fine. Then the land shifted. The grade sank toward the house instead of away. A big maple came down in a storm sometime in the 80s and changed how the runoff ran. And every spring, the whole hillside started dumping its snowmelt right against these walls. By the time I got here, the family that owned it had half given up. Used the basement for nothing but the pump and a shelf of paint cans floating in a puddle. So the first real work wasn't demolition the way you'd think. There's not much to demo in a stone-walled hole. It was digging. But before I put a shovel anywhere, I had to understand where the water was coming from, and that meant getting the inside opened up and dried enough to read. I pulled off the old furring strips somebody had nailed to the stone back in the 70s, soaked, black, crumbling in my hands. The paneling behind them came off in wet sheets, more compost than lumber. Behind all of it, the granite itself. And here's the first thing that stopped me. Those stones were laid right. 110 years, water hammering them every spring, and the wall was still plumb. I put a 4-foot level on it in 3 places, and the bubble sat dead center every time. The mortar between them had failed in places. You expect that. Lime mortar breathes and washes out over time. But the stones themselves hadn't moved so much as a hair. Somebody built this right the first time. My job is to not be the guy who ruins it. The water wasn't coming through the wall so much as under it and around it. That's the thing people get wrong about a wet basement. They paint the inside with waterproof coating and call it done. All you've done is trap the water in the stone and give the freeze something to push against. The fix is on the outside and it's in the ground. Always has been. I found the old drain too, or what was left of it. Somebody in the 50s had laid a clay tile line around part of the foundation. Good instinct, right ideas. But clay tile crushes, roots find it, and after 70 years, it was a solid tube of packed silt. I dug out a 2-foot section, and it was heavy as a fence post plugged end to end. Doing nothing, hadn't moved a drop in decades. That one wasn't their fault. They did the best work anybody knew how to do in 1955. It just ran out of years, now the money side of the demolition, so to speak. Digging out the perimeter by hand and machine, hauling the wet fill, disposing of the ruined interior framing and that ancient tile. Call it $6,000 in the first 2 weeks, mostly the excavator rental and the labor. I ran a mini excavator down to about a foot off the stone, then we hand dug the rest. You go slow there. That last foot next to the wall you do with a shovel and your own 2 arms because one careless bucket and you undermine a foundation that stood since Taft was president. I've seen a man crack a wall he was trying to save because he let the machine get greedy. Not on my watch. We opened the whole perimeter down to the footing, 4 feet deep in most spots, deeper at the low corner, stacked the good dirt separate from the clay, and with the outside opened up, I could finally see the bones of the problem, and that's where the real structure work started. Here's what the ground was telling me. The footing, the base the stone sits on was fine. Wide, solid, poured, buried deep enough below the frost line that it never heaved. And that right there is why the wall never moved in 110 years. Ainsley dug down past where the frost bites, 4 feet plus by hand with a shovel, in this soil, but there was no drainage down there and no waterproofing on the outside face of the stone. So every spring, the water table climbed up and the wet soil pushed against the wall, and the water just soaked through the mortar joints like a sponge through a sugar cube. So the structural fix is really a water fix, and they're the same job. First, I repointed the whole outside face of the foundation. That means raking out the old failed mortar joint by joint. I use a hand rake and a chisel, get down a good inch to sound material, then packing in fresh in 2 passes so it cures tight without slumping. But here's the part that matters. I used a lime-based mortar, not straight Portland cement. People want to slap modern cement mortar on old stone because it's harder and it sets faster and it feels permanent. Don't. It's too rigid. Stone moves a little with the seasons, always has, and lime moves with it. Cement won't. It traps moisture in the stone, and in a hard freeze, it'll crack the granite before it cracks itself. I've pulled cement pointing off old walls and taken a chunk of the stone with it. Lime flexes and it breathes and it gives the water somewhere to go. I matched what Ainsley used because Ainsley was right, and because a wall that's outlasted 5 generations has earned the right mortar. Then, against the cleaned stone, I applied a proper waterproof membrane, a heavy, rubberized, dimpled sheet sealed at the seams and lapped like shingles so gravity works with it, run from the footing all the way up to grade, and flashed at the top so nothing runs behind it. That's the raincoat the house never had. The dimples hold an air gap against the wall too, so it whoosh. Any last bit of moisture has room to drain down instead of sitting. I'll tell you where I got it. And hit ledge, solid bedrock, about a foot higher than I'd planned my new drain to sit. I'd already ordered the pipe and set the elevation for the whole run off my survey stakes. Meant I had to bring in a guy with a hydraulic breaker for half a day, $900 I hadn't budgeted, to cut a channel through that rock so the water had somewhere to go. If I'd probed that corner with a bar before I set my... That one is on me. Lesson's cheap when you only learn it once, and I only needed it once. At the base of the wall, on top of that ledge and along the whole perimeter, I laid the new footing drain, perforated pipe, 4-inch, holes down. Folks put the holes up and wonder why it never fills. You want water coming in from the bottom of the water table, not raining in from the top. I wrapped the whole run in filter fabric, a sock, so silt can never clog it the way it clogged that clay crushed stone, not bank-run gravel with fines in it. It's pitched, so every foot of that pipe drops about an eighth downhill, out to daylight 40 feet off in the field where it can spill and disappear into the meadow. No pump on that line. Gravity doesn't break. Gravity doesn't need electricity in an ice storm. Gravity's been working here since before the house went up, and it'll be working when I'm gone. That drain and membrane work, the repointing, the pipe, the stone bedding, backfilling it all, with a foot of clean gravel against the wall instead of that clay that held water like a bathtub. That ran about $11,000. It's just the most important money in this whole job, and it's the part nobody will ever see. Buried in the ground forever. That's usually how it goes with the work that actually matters. Now, with the outside sealed and draining, I turned inside, and this is where you fight the seasons. I'll be straight with you. I was cutting it close. Freezes hard in December. You can't dig, you can't backfill, you can't pour a slab that'll cure. Right, there's a window and it slams shut on you. I got the perimeter drain buried and the grade rebuilt by the second week of November. Snow spitting sideways that whole last day. My hands too cold to feel the shovel. Beat winter by maybe 10 days. 10 days is a lot when the alternative is waiting till April with a hole open against your foundation. Inside, I still need one system. Belt and suspenders. So along the inside base of the wall, I cut a shallow trench in the same perforated pipe and tied it to a single sealed sump pit dug into the low corner. That pumps the backup, not the plan. That the outside drain does the work 999 days out of 1,000. But if we ever get that 1,000-year rain that's coming more often than it used to, the water's got 2 ways out instead of none. Then the floor. There'd breathing moisture up into the whole house day and night. That's the thing folks miss. A wet basement makes the whole house cold and clammy 2 floors up because damp air rises and your furnace spends all winter fighting water it can't see. Costs you in oil every single month. I laid down a heavy vapor barrier over the dirt, 15 mil, taped every seam and ran it up the walls a foot and lapped it under the membrane top with the interior drain daylighting into the sump and the pit sealed with a gasketed lid so it can't off-gas radon or humidity back up into the room. First dry morning and it was just solid, quiet, no squelch. For the electrical, I pulled out the old knob and tube that some brave soul had strung down here decades back. Cloth-wrapped wire, no ground, brittle as old straw, sitting in a damp basement, which is about as cheerful as it sounds. I ran all new circuits and conduit, proper ground fault protection on every outlet because near concrete and near water, that's not optional. It's the difference between a nuisance and a funeral. Put in a couple dedicated circuits too, one for the pump, one for the dehumidifier, so a tripped breaker upstairs can never take out the systems keeping this place dry. And I insulated side of the stone. Foam, not fiberglass. Fiberglass in a basement just soaks up whatever humidity is left in the air and turns into a moldy sponge inside the wall where you can't see it rot. The foam doesn't care about moisture, doesn't feed mold, and it seals to the stone so you don't get warm room air hitting cold granite and sweating. That, plus the dry slab, plus a small dehumidifier plumbed straight to the sump, so nobody ever has to empty a bucket and the whole house is going to feel different upstairs. Warmer, drier. The furnace gets to rest, the insulation and the mechanicals, the slab, the interior drain and pump. Call that another $9,000. And I got the slab poured and curing before Christmas with a couple space heaters and a tarp tent keeping the space above 40 degrees for the first week, so the concrete set right. Concrete that freezes while it's green before it's cured is concrete you tear out in the spring because the water in it expands and blows the whole pour apart from the inside. Did that once as a young man. Not doing it twice in my life. By January, the water problem was solved, but a dry hole is still a hole. The last stretch is where it becomes a room somebody actually wants to stand in. I framed out one interior wall to hide the mechanicals via the pump pit, the panel, the dehumidifier, behind a simple flush door so the rest of the space reads clean and you're not staring at plumbing. Everywhere else, I left the stone. That was the whole point. All those years, everybody wanted to cover this granite up, stud it out, sheetrock over it, pretend it wasn't there. To me, that stone is the best thing in the house, and burying it would have been the real crime. So I cleaned it, wire brush, careful wash by hand, and then I let it dry all the way through, really dry, for the first time in a century now that it finally could. Then I sealed it with a breathable, clear coat. Breathable matters, same as the mortar. You never want to skin over stone that needs to move air. The sealer darkens the granite just enough to bring out the color. Grays and rust browns, a couple stones nearly black, and here and there one with a streak of quartz running through it that catches the light when you walk past. Over that new slab, I laid a floating engineered floor. Warm underfoot, rated for below grade, floats over a foam pad so it never touches the concrete and never wicks a drop, and if we ever did get water, it can come up and dry without buckling. Simple recessed lights in the ceiling, warm bulbs, 2700 Kelvin, none of that blue hospital light. And I aimed a run of them to wash right across that stone wall at a low angle so it throws every bump and shadow into relief. A basement's usually lit like a parking garage. This one I lit like it mattered because it does. And here's the piece I saved. When I was clearing out the debris that first week, back in the corner under the stairs, buried under those floating paint cans and a heap of rot, there was a workbench. Ainsley's, I figure, or somebody who came right after him. A heavy bench, solid maple top near 3 inches thick, hand-built. The wood was black and swollen from 20 years of standing in floodwater, the legs half gone to punk. Most people would have hauled it to the dump without a second look. I got it up on sawhorses and I dried it slow. You can't rush maple that wet or it'll check and split right down the grain. 6 weeks in a warm, dry corner, turning it, letting it give up the water on its own time. And under the black and the grime, the maple was still there. Still tight, still good. I rebuilt the legs in matching stock, cut new tenons to fit the old mortises so the top never knew the difference. I freed up that seized old vise with a week of oil and heat and patience till the screw turned smooth as the day it was made, and I sanded the top back to bare wood, and you could see the dents. 100 years of somebody's hammer, somebody's chisel, the round shadow where a can of finish sat and left its ring. I didn't sand those out. Those aren't damaged. Those are the record of every honest thing that ever got made on this bench. I finished it with oil, hand rubbed 3 coats, and set it back against the stone wall under a good light. It's the heart of the room now. Let me walk you through her. You come up the drive, and the first thing that's different is the ground itself. The grade rolls away from the house on every side now. Reshaped, planted, and settled, so the water's got nowhere to go but downhill and away, out to that daylight spill in the field. The old bulkhead door over the outside stairs is rebuilt, weather-tight, hung true, and painted a deep barn red that sits right against the fieldstone. Down the stairs, dry stairs now, real oak treads, no give in them, and you step onto that warm, floating floor instead of into a puddle. To your left, the mechanical wall clean and closed up, the whole works hidden behind one plain flush door you'd walk right past. Turn, and the main room opens up in front of you. Bare granite running the full length of it, lit warm and low. Every stone Ainsley set still standing exactly where he put it, quartz catching the light. Ceiling clean and bright overhead, and the air, that's the part you feel before you see anything. Dry as a bone, the dehumidifier humming somewhere. You can't find it. Step to the back wall under the new lights, and there's the tool wall and the bench, that old maple top, oiled and glowing amber, the vise turning smooth, the dents holding 100 years of shadow ready for the next 100 of somebody's hands. And back up top, out front, the house sits on its hillside the way it did in 1911, only now the water runs past her instead of through her. Dry to the footing, dry for good, all in $34,000. 14 weeks, 1 busted-up bedrock corner I didn't see coming, 10 days to spare on the winter, and 1 maple workbench that outlived everybody who ever doubted it. 20 years they fought that water with a pump and a prayer. The fix was never inside these walls. It was in the ground where the old fellow's footing was still waiting, still doing its job, just asking for a little help getting the water to leave. Somebody built this right the first time. All I did was finish the part he didn't have the tools for and stay out of the way of the part he got right. Next one's a whole different animal. There's a 1920s bungalow 2 towns over. Porch sagging off the front like a tired jaw, and everybody's told the owner the whole front wall is done, has to come off. I don't think it is. I think somebody hit a good post inside a bad column 90 years ago. Boxed a solid timber up in rotten paint and forgot it was there. I aim to go find it. I'll see you there.